What's that? Who there? Whoa.
Ashley, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor.
Yeah, I love it. I'm stoked today to talk to you about BTR Bar. So, before we dive into your background and how you got started, could you just give us a little snapshot on the company? Kind of what do you do, what do you sell, and what's the mission today?
Sure. So, BTR Bar is on a mission to end mindless snacking. So, we sell the first plant based, keto friendly protein bars with a purpose. So, each protein bar is boosted with 7+ superfoods and adaptogens to satisfy every snacking occasion from AM to PM. So, from energy, I've got the bars with me right here, to Zen. So, you're able to nosh if you're a cereal grazer like myself throughout the day and feel really good about it because the ingredients are so clean. So we have the cleanest label in the market, but we also have these added superfoods and adaptogens that really serve a purpose in your day as well.
That's amazing. And so I want to break down the superfoods and adaptogens because I think a lot of people hear the kind of better for you and they hear the nutritional buzzwords. And I don't think most people know what that means. I don't always know what it means. So can you just give us a breakdown on like what constitutes that category and then which of them do you have and kind of why do you choose those?
Oh, such a great question. And the better for you space is constantly growing. So 3 things that we wanted to do when we entered the space is first, we wanted to have superfoods and adaptogens and really focus on the category of adaptogens, which are plant-based herbs and roots and spices that have really been used for centuries, usually in Eastern medicine, and now they're starting to get very buzzworthy here. I've used to take supplements that had so many adaptogens 6, 7 years ago before they were really trendy and buzzworthy. So I knew that when I was making the recipes for these bars, they needed to go in there. So for example, reishi mushroom. It is an amazing mushroom to help you relax, chill out, to just help calm down. So that is actually in our Zen bar. So a lot of better for you brands are kind of throwing these buzzwords, adaptogens into their products and kind of just like it's like all but the kitchen sink really. So they'll put like 6 or 7 mushrooms, but each adaptogen actually has a very specific function that can help you do your day better. So BTR actually it stands for be bold, tenacious and resilient, and I'll get into my story a little bit later, but it's also a clever play on the word better. So because we really want people to feel better to be their best selves. So adaptogens as a whole, as a category, helps the body adapt to stress throughout the day. And obviously, 2020 has been the year of stress. So I think that, adaptogens are even trendier this year. But one thing that we're really trying to bring to the forefront is that each of our products has a specific benefit, a specific functional benefit, and they're highlighted front and center of pack.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really, it's fascinating to me, this emergence in wellness. I love it. I mean, that's kind of the topic that I've decided I'm going to focus on for, I think, the rest of my career in life. But why do you think it's taken so long for the spotlight to be shown on some of these ingredients that in the Eastern world were used for centuries before? Like, why do you think it's taken so long?
Oh, such a great question. I think it's twofold. One is that these ingredients, they don't really taste great. So my whole goal was to make healthy. One of our taglines is where healthy and delicious intersect, because we really want to feel when people see superfoods and adaptogens now, they're like, oh, this is going to taste like a green juice, when actually it can taste like a cinnamon roll if you're using the highest quality ingredients. You're sourcing, your supply chain, and then you're making sure that you're using only real ingredients and not these additives and fillers and natural flavors and artificial flavors. That really makes, like our cinnamon cookie dough bar really tastes like a cinnamon roll. So I just got off the phone with a customer who said, I just popped it in the microwave and it literally tastes like a Cinnabon, but a healthy one. So it's really, we can put cordyceps and hemp protein and maca in these products and still make it taste good because we're sourcing such incredible high quality ingredients and we're making sure that the real ingredients shine through. So I think there's a myth that a lot of these ingredients, they don't taste good. And it's true, right? Like I don't know if you've ever had like mushroom coffee or whatnot, there's some people who love it. And then there's some people who realize that mushrooms can be really bitter. And it just really takes, personal chef, a lot of time, a lot of recipe iterations to really make it taste amazing. And then I think there's just so much education required behind this category of adaptogens. Whereas a lot of companies build their company on one core ingredient, we are building our company on thousands of ingredients and making sure they come together synergistically. So there's a ton of education on our part as a brand to make sure that our customers know what is reishi mushroom, what's cordyceps mushrooms, what is maca. There's just so much education behind that, but I love it, and I'm so excited that we're really up for the challenge with this.
Yeah. I mean, the education piece is really interesting to me. And I'm curious kind of where you fall on on this kind of spectrum, because for most consumers, I don't know if they have the like attention span or time to care that much about every single ingredient. They kind of, people I've talked to kind of bucket them and like, all right, it's bad for me, it's good for me. And then within good for me, it's really good for me, or it's kind of good for me, right? How granular do you think, fast forward 5 to 10 years, do you think the consumer gets? Is it just like a small percent of your customers that really care about every single ingredient, or is that going to happen with the masses?
Such a great question. So we have two consumers, and we're 2 months in business, so a little over 2 months now. But I've had a very clear vision for the company for years. So it really, a lot of customers come to us and say, "You haven't been around for 2 years," and like that's the highest compliment, because it really shows that the brand ethos is something that I've really been thinking about for so long. But I think the education piece is definitely something that can be a challenge. So we have our primary consumer, who is someone who immediately buys a product and turns over the nutrition fact label and reads every single ingredient. That's our primary consumer. They can pronounce all the ingredients. All the ingredients are real food. They understand what adaptogens are. Maybe they have a plant-based diet. Maybe they just want to reduce their sugar intake. The macros fit really well. That's our primary consumer. But we're also starting to see our secondary consumer, who just sees, oh, cinnamon cookie dough, dark chocolate brownie. That sounds really good. That flavor, we have some really unique flavor profiles. I want to try it. They try it. They're like, what are these ingredients are amazing, and I have an energy boost. So it's kind of that added benefit they're starting to see. So we're hooking them with flavor. So our primary consumer, we're hooking with functional benefit. They see energy. They're excited. This is going to replace their, second cup of coffee for the day. Then our secondary consumer, they see flavor first, and they're just hooked. And then they try it and they realize that healthy can be delicious. So right now, as a new company acquiring new customers, we're, really going after this primary market and our primary consumer, but we're starting to really acquire secondary consumers who are becoming loyal customers, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm really pumped to get into, how you came to make it and the distribution. But let's take a step back, and we probably should have started with this. I know you have a fascinating story, with how you came to start the company. So can you just give us the nutshell of your background and like how BTR came to be?
Sure. So BTR stands for Be Bold, Tenacious, and Resilient. That's actually my parents' personal mantra and something that has stayed with me throughout my entire life. So the company is actually a tribute to them. So I started the company in their honor. So a little over 5 years ago, both of my parents were diagnosed with rare forms of cancer. So I was their primary caretaker. I was working full time, just basically eating junk out of a hospital vending machine and cafeteria food. So I have a background in my background's actually very interesting. So I graduated from NYU with a background in biochemistry and public health nutrition. And I also have my second master's that I started was in food studies. So I really, really have always dedicated my life to wellness, to understanding food, to understanding, how food is broken down and whatnot in our body. And I've always really felt that food can be medicine. So, at this time, taking care of my parents and my own health really began to suffer. I just was experiencing so much brain fog. My stress levels were through the roof. My energy levels were down. I really just wanted a better for you, truly better for you snack that served a functional purpose in my day, but also was low in sugar and had a really clean ingredient label. There's some protein bars and bites and snack companies that have done so well in the market and, have really opened pathways for new and emerging brands to be here, but they're still using ingredients like natural flavors, or which natural flavors are really not so natural, and brown rice syrup and is the first ingredient. And I'm just like, there was really nothing on the market that had a truly clean label and wasn't using emulsifiers, and that also had these superfoods and adaptogens that I've known about for years. So, I started writing down recipe ideas in the hospital cafeteria with my parents and just brainstorming with them. And I've always kind of been this serial entrepreneur. Even as a child, I remember talking to my parents about, let's open a storefront. I was a dancer as a kid, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll open a dance studio. I've always wanted to own my own business. And my father actually worked in legal and trademarks, and he actually incorporated the company. And I remember him saying, and both my parents unfortunately passed away, and it's been a crazy roller coaster of 5 years. And this is why I wanted to start the company for them. And he actually said, I'm incorporating this company. I know you're going to do something with it, make it happen. And really their mantra and every decision that I make within the company, I feel them and I feel their presence. And I know that they're with me. And, I'm really proud to be able to bring their legacy to the forefront of the company.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible story. I think it goes without saying. Like, I'm super super sad, and for your parents and you, I think it's such an incredible triumph, that you've gone through. A question I had when I was thinking about it is, like, I can't imagine losing both parents at the same time. One alone is crazy. I would think someone in that scenario would potentially, skew towards stability and like, okay, let's get a corporate job and like let's settle the ship. But you went the other way, which is I want to be an entrepreneur and really go all in. And I think you mentioned there why, your roots led you there. But in the moment, kind of like, what was your mindset? Were you just like, this is what my dad, and mom wanted me to do, like I'm going all in? Is that kind of how you thought about it?
So I did. So I'll give you a little background on timeline. So my first master's was actually in higher education and counseling. So I worked actually in the residential life space. I lived in dorms with college students, and I was their mentor, and making sure that the building was still standing at the end of the day. So I did that for several years, and it really I think that I wanted something more, and I actually did take a stable job, when my parents, like, when they were sick. But I have this Google Doc, and I look back at it now after starting the company to see years ago the recipes that I was starting to work on in my kitchen. But I actually tabled the idea. So I took a job. I was a second hire at a beauty and supplement startup, and it was a great opportunity for me to learn and gain experience and really teach myself. But I knew I needed to be in it within a team environment, especially with my parents being sick. So I did try to take a little bit more of that stable route. But especially with everything with the pandemic, there was just my motto is that life is so precious. And after seeing everything that I did with my parents and taking care of them, and how they raised me, I knew I needed to go after this. And there's no better time than in the midst of a pandemic to go for it, and to really capitalize on this opportunity to bring something new that's not in the market yet, but in a very oversaturated category.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, and that's a perfect transition to what I wanted to get to, which is, you're rare in that you have a food background. Most of the people, at least the founders that I've studied in this space, like the RX bars, et cetera, not everyone had experimented with food before, and so it's an even tougher journey for them to decide to enter a space they have no background in. You had this background, and so I'm curious, when you were analyzing what space within food to pursue, why do you pick the bar market, which is, potentially one of the most competitive markets there is?
I think it's probably comes from me. For as long as I can remember, I have eaten a protein bar every day, probably several. So and I've had several jobs in several different industries. I'm a learner. I'm a sponge. So I love to be able to, enter a space and learn everything about it and really, and make it work. So I also had a personal training business. I was a personal trainer for many years. A couple years ago, I was running marathons. I was eating probably 3 protein bars a day, and they were not gut friendly, so they did not do well for my stomach. And I just have always had this idea in the back of my head, like, I really would love to just make my own protein bar and do something with it. But I think I was, definitely scared because the space is so crowded. And in food and bev, it's probably one of the most crowded categories, as you said. So it was definitely a challenge coming here. And I think that bars are only just the beginning. So I do see this company expanding into different verticals within the snacking space. Like I'd mentioned, I'm a cereal snacker. So I'm one of those people that grazes throughout the day and I love it. I look forward to snack time. So I really want our customers, I want to bring back snack time and really make people feel like snacking isn't bad. It's not, it's a good thing for you. And I really want people to think about it coming from it as a mindful occasion and snacking with intention.
Totally. Yeah. I think so. We have the rare opportunity to talk to you at the really earliest of stages, right? We've had a variety of founders on the show that are in different parts of their journey, but for you, you're at the beginning. And I think what's really interesting, and I'd love to hear from you, is how you define success, or like how do you set metrics in the early days for growth? And I'm assuming it's, number of bars sold, boxes sold, returning customers. Like how do you think about that? And what are some of the metrics that you've set so far?
Such a great question. So, in the early stages, I think that my whole goal is not to get so focused on vanity metrics, but it can be very challenging to do that. So I'm definitely looking at month over month growth. I'm looking at repeat customer rate. I'm looking at average order value. That's a really big one for us because we're young. We have 3 main SKUs and our average order value is on the lower side. So really being able to figure out cost of acquisition and how that works with a smaller average order value. When are we going to bring more flavors to market? But for me, I'm always looking at growth. So if we're starting in one place, what does Q1 of 2021 look like? So, really proud to share we grew 260% in the month of November. That was our second full month in business. So excited and so grateful for the community that we're building. But those are the key metrics for me is really, looking at making sure that we're cash flow positive, all of these things on the back end as a lean, bootstrapped, self-funded business is so critical as well. So trying not to, finding the balance between the vanity metrics, which are important for investors and buyers, and then also the back end of the business, making sure that it's viable.
Totally. And I think that's a good transition into kind of this marketing and growth topic, which I love to get in with almost every founder we have on. And I'd love to, double click into your, customer acquisition growth playbook. So, you know, you had your PR team reach out to me. So you obviously have PR working from organic to paid. How are you thinking about the differences there? And of course, it's in the early days, you're still experimenting, but what have you learned so far about your customers?
Such a great question. So a lot of our growth is around the community that I am organically building. So I'm a solopreneur doing this hashtag solopreneur life on my own right now. I'm very grateful. My husband is here. We do all of our fulfillment in-house in a warehouse here in San Francisco. So he helps with fulfillment, which is wonderful. But I'm still handwriting notes to customers and to, samples that we send out. As we scale, things obviously will change. But to me, it is very, very critical that the company is a person to our consumers. And we're growing as a digitally native brand. And our largest following is on Instagram. So, we have a VIP squad. It's called hashtag Team Better, over 100 brand ambassadors who are really excited to, promote the product. And these are all people that I single-handedly reached out to myself because I want to make sure that we're building this community of people who are customers as well as loyalists and who love the product and really resonate. And, I talk to these people about their dogs, about their family. And, to me, I really want the company to be less of a transaction and more of this community building. So that has really been very successful in the organic front. And then I really want to invest in some spaces that are actually not as familiar to me. So I'm taking a Facebook, Instagram ads course, and that has completely revolutionized the business. So being able to understand the difference between top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, what it all looks like. So, we are investing in Facebook and Instagram ads just to really start getting the brand out there because it's such a crowded category. We need to be able to have something different. So, we're really a 50-50 split between paid and organic. And then on the other side, with organic, I'm publishing content, at least 2 pieces of content each week, usually recipes or articles about adaptogens, about specific mushrooms, to really answer our customers' questions and to keep them coming back for more. So people are coming to the site to read our articles and to try recipes, which is really fun as well because they might be entering the BTR bar experience because they found a recipe of ours. So really trying to kind of hit all of these specific pain points for customers and explain what BTR bar can do for them that another protein bar won't.
One of the hardest things has got to be prioritization, right? Like, what do you focus on? Just what you just went through in the marketing alone is like a multiple full-time people's worth of work, right? You're doing that, you're doing fulfillment. I'm sure the branding, you're enhancing that, right? You're working on new product development. Just walk us through how you focus and prioritize day to day, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are trying to get something off the ground, and that's what's killing them.
That is such a great question, and something that I feel that I definitely need to work on every day. I feel like sometimes I'm so productive and so focused, and some days I am all over the place. So I think that for me, really prioritizing based on what is most vital to the company at this very moment is what I try to do during my 9 to 5. And then I'm one of those, I think all entrepreneurs are people who are working past that 5 p.m. and are excited about it. So this is something, that the vision and the mission of the company is just so personal to me. So I'm usually working, you might have gotten an email from me at midnight last night. I'm usually working, 2, 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then I'm up usually around 7 a.m. to start
You're
the day.
grinding.
I'm grinding. So this is definitely this is rise and grind time. And when we get to the wellness stack, sleep is one of the things that I am not prioritizing. So we can talk all about that as well. But right now, the prioritizing is it's probably one of the most challenging things about being a founder, because to me, some of the most exciting things is that I get to talk to all of our customers, to all of our brand ambassadors. I get to be on Instagram and be that person who's communicating with them. But that, as we scale, that cannot happen. It just wouldn't be feasible. But right now, that's something that's super exciting. But I also know that I'm also the one that has to make sure that the creative is up and running, the website's working. So it is definitely a challenge. But all the number one priorities happen between 9 to 5, and then all the creative, fun interaction, communication, that all happens after 5 p.m.
When you're doing everything and you're trying to prioritize, eventually when the business allows, you'll start bringing people on. How are you thinking about the disciplines of the people that you'll look for? I'm sure you've already made a list of like, all right, if the business does this much revenue, we're bringing this person on, right? What disciplines are you hiring for, or do you think you will hire for soon?
In 2021, I would love to make 2 key strategic hires. So one part-time and one full-time. So I really am looking for, especially as like my second right hand, I'm looking for this Jack/Jill of all trades to really be able to brainstorm, be excited about creative, but also be okay helping with fulfillment. So that is, when I worked at a startup, that was my role. I wore a ton of hats and I loved it. So I'm looking for someone who is gritty, passionate. It really is behind the mission of the company, but also excited to be on Instagram at 9 and 10 p.m. looking for new creative ideas for social posts, being able to kind of, cross all of these different verticals within a company. And then my full-time hire is this is where I'm trying to decide in the next 6 months. We'll really decide whether it's going to be a digital, like a senior digital strategist, or if it's going to be more on the sales side. And as we grow, I see this as an omni-channel. I want BTR bar to be omni-channel. I see the product, and you can see it in the background over here. The packaging is beautiful. It fits on shelf. It will look amazing on shelf. But right now, especially in the time of the pandemic, the retail world is challenging for the on-the-go snacking space. And I want to make sure that we're going into market when we're able to demo, when stores are opening again and people are looking, trying to discover the product in store. Right now, people are going into retail stores and they're picking up what they need and they're leaving. So being mindful of that for next year, for that second full-time hire, is either going to be on the digital end or is going to be on a retail sales end.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next, actually, is with the distribution. So I feel like for this category in particular, being where the people are, right? You can obviously sell D2C and that's the best margins you can get. But being where the people are in a retail location, Whole Foods, health food stores is critical, right? It just is. And so, given the pandemic, I can imagine those brands like the Whole Foods of the world are probably tightening up around the new vendors they're exploring just from a bandwidth perspective. But I'd love to hear, for you who's doing all the negotiation, you're going out, you're sourcing these contacts. What has that been like? What kind of reception have you gotten from those companies?
It's a great question. I think the majority of the responses, and this is something I try to tell myself every day. One of my mentors always said, like, you're going to hear no often, but there's always a yes on the other side of no. So that's something I'm trying to be really mindful. I am putting us out there. I want us, I want BTR Bar to be on the map. I don't really want us to hide for a couple years and grow in silence and then, all of a sudden put ourselves out there, because then there's going to be someone in the market that's doing exactly what we're doing. It's just that it happens all the time. So I really want to be at this forefront of functional snacking. So I have just been putting us out there to national retailers, regional retailers, really being just getting some feelers just to make sure that the product is in front of people's eyes, knowing that, it's probably going to enter the category in late 2021 or 2022. I just really want I want to drive trial, and I want to get samples in people's hands. Right now, we've actually been getting some really positive feedback about people loving the physical product, but about the category set as a whole isn't growing. The category set is declining right now. So hopefully in Q1, Q2, the goal is for BTR Bar to be the one to add sales into that set. So the more data that I can gather as an e-commerce brand, and the more I can say, we have a concentrated number of customers in New York City, we have a concentrated number of customers in Los Angeles. This is why I feel like it would be great to do a regional rollout here. So we're doing something different. The packaging stands out. So this is why we should either displace a brand on shelf, or you should make room for a brand on shelf. So in the protein bar space, it's more about displacing another brand, which is sad and unfortunate. That's how it works in such saturated categories. And we need to make sure that, once you're on shelf, that's like the easy part. You have to make sure that you're selling through. And I'm confident with our repeat customer rate constantly growing on our website. We're so excited to be in retail because our customers are constantly coming to us saying, like, I'm fine ordering from your website, but I want to go to Whole Foods and I want to pick up a couple bars when I'm on vacation. Can I do that? So that is definitely the next step, but I need to make sure it's right with the environment we're in.
Yeah. So I'm curious, and I have a couple of like ideas from a marketing perspective that I'd love to talk through, but any like outside the box tactics that you've thought of, maybe you haven't deployed yet, but you've just been thinking like, all right, in Q1 or Q2 next year, like I'm willing to take a, $5,000 bet on this and just see what happens. Like anything like that you would share?
I think one thing that comes to mind is actually brand partnerships. So something that I'd be really excited about. There's some brands I love in the space, and I'd love to work with them on kind of co-branding a product. I think, there's some nut butter companies that I'm obsessed with, and the food and beverage space is just very, everyone's pretty close knit and gets a chance to meet each other, whether that's via Instagram, virtually, or at trade shows when those eventually come back. I think I'd love to, to make a bet and go into production with another founder who is excited about their product and the mission and the nutrition facts and everything aligns. I think that would be really fun to do. And it's a great opportunity for us to get in front of their customers and them to get in front of ours.
Yeah, that was actually one of the ideas I had, something similar to that. So like I'm pretty big in this like health tech space, and I've had a couple of founders on the show, like Josh from Levels and Mateo from 8 Sleep, and they have amazing companies. And I think it would be really interesting if there was a way where like every time an 8 Sleep bed was sold, like a care package of BTR bars came with it, right? Because the customer base that you're targeting is the same. It's people who care about better for you, who want to optimize their health, right? And so to your point, co-branding and actually making like a Justin's butter product would be really cool too. Like that was another idea I had. But what do you think about that?
Exactly. I love that. And, I think that wellness is, and this is why I love the wellness corner, and the way that you think about wellness being like a stack is it's holistic. And, I'm really excited that to be within the wellness space in food and beverage, but I also know that like my sleep personally is lacking. So, I have to make sure that I'm being a role model for the company and making sure that there's so many, all the boxes are checked. So I really want to make sure that moving forward, we're not just this, and this is why we put out so much content. We're not focused only on, okay, here's a protein bar for you to eat, and it's good because it has protein. that's why we have all these functional benefits to our bars. So, our Zen bar, I'd love to sell it with a BTR bar sleep mask, or I'd love to partner with Calm or Headspace and really be able to, have these larger partnerships and larger brands that you're working with that really, work together so synergistically.
Yeah. I mean, it does work. Like when I was younger, I would buy products from bodybuilding.com and I would get whatever the protein, typical basic products like protein, but they would throw in free samples of brands and SKUs of things completely off of what I wanted, right? But it allows it to get in front of you in a way that you're already kind of purchasing.
Totally. Such a great model.
Yeah. Another idea I had was, so I'm curious around influencer, and I know it can get expensive, right, when you're sending free boxes, but have you started down that route? Because I think that would be really effective as well in getting a lot of kind of pseudo organic, it's still kind of paid, but pseudo organic traction.
Yeah, so that's actually my background is in influencer marketing. So I guess when I say my background, it's at my previous startup.
You have a lot of
um,
backgrounds.
I have a lot of backgrounds, right? I wore just so many hats, but influencer marketing is really where it was really my niche, and because I love talking with people and learning about, their background, learning about what led them to become influencers, and because it's a lifestyle, and meeting them in person. And I'm so excited for, when travel really opens up again. I'm going to go to each city as we travel and do shows and events and whatnot, and set up meetups for our brand ambassadors. So we have definitely been tapping into the influencer space, trying to keep everything organic to start off with, but knowing that content development is very time intensive. And I really want to make sure that we're respecting our influencers and respecting their time. And recipe development is, could take a day for them to create one recipe with BTR bars. So that is something that, paid sponsorships is definitely something that we'll be pursuing in 2021, and just trying to start off a little bit slower and, more organically, especially because we're lean and bootstrapped. So, but it's definitely, it's in the pipeline. And, right now we've been sending samples so people can try them and share them in their Instagram stories and unbox. And that definitely gets a ton of traction. So, in addition to revenue, it's exciting to see that, when an influencer shares, we're getting more followers, we're getting people message us on our site saying, "Oh my God, I just saw your product because so and so shared about it. Can you tell me more?" So that's really, it's just opening up those lines of communication by having people who are just so obsessed and loyal to the brand.
Totally. And so I was reading, and another thing that you did was, and you mentioned it before, I think you built this, or you're building this organic kind of community, not specifically tied to BTR, right? It's inspired by, and you're kind of an active participant, but it's a lot of different people who are either nutritionists or just whole food enthusiasts. And I'm curious, what other, trends is such a buzzword, but what other things or learnings are coming out of that group other than kind of what you're pursuing in the protein bar space that are interesting from a wellness perspective?
Oh my goodness, so many. So I try to set up. So you brought up a great point. I forgot to mention. We have something called the BTR Collective. So we have a brand ambassador team, which are just people who are enthusiasts. They love health and wellness, and they just want to be, part of BTR Bar. They want to rep us. They want, they buy swag. It's really fun. And then we also have our BTR Collective, which is about 100 registered dietitians, nutritionists, health coaches, doctors, naturopathic doctors who I set up calls with, usually individually, one on one, and we're starting to do group calls starting this month, which is exciting, just to pick their brain about trends in the space, what their clients are seeing, and what their clients need. Because if I'm sending product to a registered dietitian, I want to know what their client is looking for. So, in the space right now, I think that the number one trend and what everyone is bringing to me is make more things around stress relief, calming, mood boosting. 2020 has been a year. And I think that people are really looking for products, whether it's food, beverage, supplements that are going to just help them live their best life and just stay calmer. So the Zen bar is definitely a favorite.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the stress management is so critical. I think it's fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating how early we still are in this. Like, there's so many products that are really underdeveloped or untapped, and with research like psychedelics and all these new Eastern medicine tactics that are just emerging. And I think they're really coming to a head. Like, we've never had more stress, more rampant anxiety. And I think a lot of people who haven't ever tried them are going to start turning to them in the next few years. So it's an exciting space to be in.
I totally agree. And there's more and more research done every day, especially in the space of like, ashwagandha and reishi. They're so vital to society and Eastern medicine centuries ago. And, our society right now is just so stressed. And I think consumers are really getting on board with trying things that they've never tried before if it's in a vehicle that is accessible to them, like a protein bar, like a beverage. So that's why, it's the beverage space, I think, is actually quite ahead of grocery because beverages are putting so many exciting botanicals and herbs in their drinks. And that's why probably the one other category that is just as saturated, maybe even a little bit more, is like sparkling beverages and just anything pretty much in the cooler section of the grocery store. And they're just doing incredible things. And it's, I'm just excited to be part of that, but on the grocery side.
Totally. And this may put you on the spot a bit, but I'd love to play like a little Mythbusters because you seem like someone who knows so much about, what is healthy, what isn't, versus the misnomers within like marketing. So, yeah, of course. What are some of the things that you feel like an average person thinks is healthy or thinks is good for them, but in reality, it is not?
Oh, this is a tough one. So BTR bars are keto friendly, paleo friendly, vegan, plant based. I mean, we really check all the boxes. I think that at the end of the day, the lifestyle that I follow is really about intuitive eating and eating what's good for your body. But I think that as a whole, I think that right now, low carb is what people thinks is right and is what is good and what is healthy. But and it works really well for some people, but for others it might not. So I think really, I think people want to fit themselves in a tribe and identify with a specific tribe. And if it works for them and their body feels good and they feel better than ever, I have so many friends and colleagues and influencers we work with who are keto and they just feel so amazing. They have no brain fog. They, wake up at 5 a.m. and, do like a 12-mile run and they're able to, they just have so much energy because their body's in ketosis and it works for them. But other people don't experience that. So I think for me, this is why I've brought this Btr Collective together because I really want to talk to the people who are the specialists. So the registered dietitians, the nutritionists, people who have degrees who can tell you, what who do testing, personalized nutrition to focus on their specific needs. So I think right now it's, in the country, people are like, okay, I think I'll try this diet because it's going to be good for me. But without seeing, it's like going to see trying to diagnose yourself from WebMD, which I am guilty of pretty much all the time. But it's like, trying to take care of your physical health, without going to see a doctor. And I think being able to, find a lifestyle that works for you and that is healthy specifically for you. It just health is so individualized. So I would love to see, the country move towards this concept of I'm going to invest, some of my resources into going to see an RD or to go see a doctor about my health and really figure out how food can be integrated into my lifestyle.
That's why I love levels so much, and I'm sure you've come across them because they're the first to allow individualized data in real time. That's below the surface level. So like we've had fitness trackers, and that's helpful to know like calories burned or an estimate of that, but we've never been able to go beneath the surface. And so I really think there's going to be a revolution of who knows what it will look like if it's you've got a whole sleeve of sensors or it's a ingestible or something, but it's going to be fascinating. And once that happens, I think there'll be a lot more emphasis on, all right, let's go to the doctor and figure out how to read this data. Like now that you have it, like what does this data mean?
Exactly. It's so personalized. It's so personal. And I think that, when people try to fit themselves into, one box, it can be limiting. So, and even though I really wanted to make sure that BTR bars fit a bunch of different, across different intersections in the health and wellness space, because I knew that was going to be important. And I think the one thing as a society we can all agree on is that added sugar specifically is not good for us. It's not like, if you eat a cookie from time to time, it's totally fine. But for me, I tell my husband this all the time. I'm one of those people that if I'm going to do something, it's like go big or go home. So I wasn't going to create a protein bar that had, some sugar, like maybe 6 or 7 grams. Like it's better than another option, but I really wanted to make this like best for you option, 0 grams of added sugar, because I just felt the most comfortable bringing a product to market that I felt comfortable eating every day, multiple times a day, and feeding my family. That's the only way I was going to bring a product to market.
So given that, I think that DNA is infused in BTR, right, for the protein bar space. But of course, as you mentioned, you want to go into other verticals. Thinking about like manifesting 5, 10 years from now, talk us through like some things you've thought about. And they may only be like jotted in notes, like, all right, 3 years from now, we'll tackle the whatever nuts space or whatever it is. But what are some of those things that excite you?
Oh, such a good question. And I do think about this so much, and I try to like take myself out of the clouds a bit, and I'm like, okay, let's work on getting this Facebook ad up and running first before we think about 3 years down the line. But I love innovating and really building the pipeline. So for me, I probably mentioned this many times now, I'm a snacker, and I'm a sweet snacker. I don't really have like a very strong sweet tooth, but I want to make sure that I don't necessarily see BTR bar expanding into like the protein chip category. It's a possibility. I don't rule anything out. I'd like to have an open mind, but I think that there's just so much innovation, so much room for innovation with bringing superfoods and adaptogens into cookies and brownies and into more of the snack space that is right now. There's some better for you options, but there's no best for you options. And that's really where this white space is. And the same thing existed in the protein bar space. And that's why we're here. But that's really where, in 3 years, I want to really develop our protein bar line first. Even though the on-the-go snacking space is down right now, it's coming back. So as soon as like the country returns to a little bit more of a state of normalcy, I think people want to leave their homes, and they want to go back and work in an office, and it might take a year, but people are excited to take these snacks with them. So I don't think it's going anywhere. In the meantime, we're excited to be marketing to people that you can eat a protein bar in between Zoom meetings at home. So really being able to kind of tie this in your work from home life. But in 3 to 5 years, I definitely see us moving into that sweet snack space and trying to clean up that aisle a bit.
I'm pumped to try the BTR bars because I think from what you're saying, you found a way to eliminate the trade-off of taste and good for you with the protein bar. And in the cookie brownie space, I don't think anyone's done that. Like they've made good for you, but they've sacrificed the taste and that enjoyment, indulgence. So I'm pumped to be along for the ride to see what you come up with.
I'm excited. It's definitely it's a challenge, and it takes it takes a village, and I'm really excited. I work with a personal chef, and we have the Btr Collective that helps advise on ingredient profiles. So I have a background as well, and then we do work with a food scientist as well to make sure that the consistency is right. So the personal chef is making this taste amazing, and the food scientist is making sure that the consistency is perfect and right.
Totally. So, I want to shift into some of these kind of more personal questions, or at least, founder focused. And one of them that we talked about a little bit before is around the hiring process. And so we mentioned the roles you were looking for, but I think what's becoming evident to me that's super valuable for people is actually talking to founders about like what's the process that you will go through to be able to sort out the BS that people can say in an interview versus like the actual talent that they have. And so from that perspective, you've worked in a startup, you've worked many jobs, and you're going to be starting to hire for these people. How do you think you'll structure that, and what will you look for?
The main things that I'm looking for is this raw sense of talent. I think because my background is so diverse and so generalized, I don't necessarily think I'm looking for someone who, necessarily has to have 20 or 30 years of experience in one industry or one space, or, the master guru. I think I'm looking for this raw talent, excitement, passion, and I think that sounds a little cheesy, but I've interviewed so many people from my previous startup, but also when my job in education, I was running buildings and communities, and I needed to hire my managers, my resident assistants, and they were really responsible for the lives of the students living in our buildings and making you just know. I think there's like that. I operate the company right now from this 50% data driven mindset and this 50% gut intuition. You just know when someone has that like X factor. So I think that, at the end of the day, I'm looking for someone who's really excited to, be grinding and hustling. And that's something that sounds really fun to them because they want to be a part of this startup community. But I also want to make sure that they feel like they're learning something. And that's where my education counseling background comes from. They have to be learning, not just, okay, I'm going to pack up some orders. I'm going to, respond to your emails. I'm going to do customer service. If there's no learning experience, they're going to be unhappy and they're going to leave. And, as I am a millennial myself. I'm, on the older side of millennials, but I know millennials very well and hired many millennials, many Gen Z as well. And the I want to make sure that they're getting something out of it because I've seen so many young men and women leave the industry because they have not had good experiences. And I just want to make BTR Bar that company that people are so excited to work, not necessarily for, but with. And it's just so in alignment with their health and their work-life balance and still getting a ton of stuff done.
The millennial and Gen Z demographic has shown over time that the incentive equation is definitely shifting. And so it's interesting to think about, on one end, this obviously makes sense, but everyone's like, all right, as a founder, retain as much equity as you can for yourself, right? Don't sell it away, don't give it away. On the other end, you almost need that equity driven variable compensation more than ever for of course your higher level hires, but any millennial or Gen Z that's going to go above and beyond is looking for something like that. So
Totally.
how do you think about that? And for like the other startups, founders that you've talked to and startups you've explored, like, how are they doing it?
I think you're totally right. I think that to have someone who is going to work as hard as you, they need to have a piece of the pie. And I think it's absolutely fair. And I think that, I've seen in a lot of past experiences as well as colleagues where, you work so hard and you're young, but the company's founder decides to go hire someone, and give a ton of equity to someone that has 20 or 30 years of experience. And I think that happens frequently. And I think that my mindset, especially being a younger founder, I'm excited to hire from a pool of millennials and Gen Z that because I know that they're going to work hard if there's some incentive besides like health insurance. Like they're looking for some equity to be or a new laptop. I want to make sure that they feel that they're taken care of right now and that they have, enough money to pay their rent because that's definitely the right now moment, but that there's a long-term investment in the company and they're excited about it. They want to stay to see the company grow because that's where the turnover comes from is, someone will stay for a year, it looks good on their resume, they'll move on to the next job. It's great because they learn something, but then you lose them and then you also have to rehire. And that rehiring process is so time consuming and can be such a challenge. So to fill roles while doing that role simultaneously. So I'm really looking for someone who's excited to stay with the company for at least 5 years. That's the best life cycle. And if someone wants to stay forever with me, that'd be great.
Totally. Yeah, that's awesome. So, food businesses are notoriously cash intensive, right? And so I know you're just starting. So, but I'm curious, have you started looking for investment? And and to be honest, I'm kind of on the fence of I wouldn't, if running my own company, would try to like hold out and not raise for as long as possible because I just, to me, like the raise mentality doesn't seem right unless you absolutely need it. So I'm curious like where you fall on that spectrum and if you have started to those investor pitches, how have those been going?
I'm trying to find the balance between I'm also in the same mindset as you. I love running the company. And like I said, I had this clear vision for the company. I also know that, as soon as you take on investment, it can be challenging because that investment needs to go where the investors are looking for it to go. So I might be excited about, building up our brand ambassador community and really working on increasing customer lifetime value. But, an investment team might say, okay, this has to go only into production. So I'm trying to find the balance because it is just so heavy intensive, especially because you're holding inventory. And in food and bev, there was an expiration date. So, coming from the supplement industry, this is something I learned really quickly. Supplements usually have a 2 to 5 year shelf life. Our bars have a 6-month shelf life right now. So we're extending shelf life a bit on the next production run, but it's still going to be under a year. So being mindful of that has definitely been challenging. So right now I'm having some conversations with angel investors. I haven't even raised family and friends rounds. So I'm really, early stage. But I also know that, the future of snacking is functional, and I want BTR Bar to be at the forefront of that. So if we don't even take these conversations and consider raising in the next year or two, someone will basically pass us by. So being mindful of not growing too fast where the growth becomes out of control, and you want to make sure that if you get into 100 stores, you are supporting every one of those 100 stores. And that is something I can promise the retailer partners we take on. In order to do that, that's where raising comes into play. So making sure that I'm balancing. So I think it's great that we're starting first just having conversations. We've been approached by multiple investors at this point because we're plant-based, we're keto friendly. Like, we check a lot of the boxes that investors are looking for. Our growth digitally has been rapid, and we only have our own website, Amazon, and a few other e-commerce channels. So we're not even in brick and mortar, and we're already growing rapidly.
Yeah, it's a good sign.
Thank you. I think that's really exciting to investors, but we need to make sure that it makes sense in the time frame. And I think once we land our first anchor retail account, I'd feel much more comfortable taking on an investment, because that will help really open a region, help us support that region, help sell through products, and just make more and more flavor profiles and more SKUs and get us to where we need to be. So I'm definitely, within the next 12 to 24 month cycle, I am looking to do a small raise to start us off.
Since you studied so many different things, and you started two different masters, I'm curious if you were to give advice to your younger self, like maybe in high school, let's say, and knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself then to focus on, or spend your time doing in school? Because I think there's a lot of people that have these epiphanies mid, late 20s, early 30s about like, oh, I wish I would have done this and this when I was growing up. What would some of those things be for you?
Oh yeah, I know right out of the gate. So I studied at NYU. So my undergraduate degree is from NYU. I did my first master's at Rutgers University in higher education. And then I went back to NYU while I was working. I started my second master's, which I ended up not finishing because I wanted to take the startup experience, but that was in food studies. So I would 100% tell my younger self, while I was at NYU, instead of focusing on courses in biology, and I took organic chemistry and physics, I should have gone to Stern and taken business, entrepreneurial courses, more marketing, communications courses. I think it would have been so much fun and just helped amplify my experience. There is something, like I said, I'm a learner, and I love teaching myself things. I need to know everything before I hire other people to do it, because I just want to make sure that I've done all of the roles and worn all of the hats before someone else comes in and comes to me and says, Ashley, I don't know how to do this. I can help guide them, as opposed to saying, go figure it out yourself, which sometimes is good, and then sometimes is a detriment to the company. So really just being that mentor and resource, and then finding someone who knows it better than me. That's the goal. But I would definitely have told my younger self to take some more business courses and just get that background. But because I think that really, really helps, especially on the back end of the business, building models that can be really complex, forecasting, and it's a challenge every day. So, but I am never afraid to ask for help. I think, I set up a ton of calls with other founders. We brainstorm. We talk to each other all the time about the food and bev business. And I think that's so critical to make sure those lines of communication are open. They may seem like, people are in competition with each other, but realistically, we're all working together and really trying to put out the best food and beverage products possible. And we need each other to be able to learn from.
It's an interesting dichotomy in school between like what you're passionate about and interested in, and then things that will be like a utility for you later. Like if you think you're at all interested in startups or business, like getting that business core, even though accounting or finance may not be your passion area, is like so critical. And I think how could you expect an 18-year-old to be able to like navigate those waters? It's crazy, but it's interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to shift to the wellness stack. So we alluded to this a few times, and I think you're super passionate about this, and so am I. So I'd love to get your take on this. And you've mentioned it, and I've said this in a lot of episodes before. The way I think about wellness is a compounding, and things layer on top of each other. And so I'd love to start just how do you think about wellness? We can break down into each topic in a second, but overall, how do you think about it? How does it play a part in your daily life?
It is always at the forefront. And I think it's it's more from a business perspective, because I'm always trying to think about how can I infuse more wellness into the company, and how can we, have a brand ethos around, living your best life, being bold, tenacious, and resilient. I want to make sure that that brand message comes through in everything we do, which means that sometimes my own wellness takes a bit of a back seat. So I think that, the way that I actually, look for accountability buddies to help me, focus on my own personal wellness. At the end of the day, I'm very lucky. I have a good support system of friends, but, my husband is wonderful. He's not in this industry. So, has a background in teaching and advertising, and he, has worked at larger companies, and he's just so excited and so supportive, of me all the time, but really can drag me away from the computer after, I'm staring at it 16 hours a day. So I think that I need other people to help hold me accountable to my own wellness while I think about the wellness, that messaging that we're putting out there for the business.
Yeah. So double clicking into, I want to talk about some wellness, tactics or things that you think about for you. And then I'm very curious about how you're thinking about it for the business as well. So, to start with you, like what are your morning routine and evening routine? I know as a startup founder, things vary, but do you have any rituals that you stick to pretty often?
Yeah. So morning routine, the best dose of morning goodness and happiness is I play with my dog. So I play with my dog for probably a good 15, 20 minutes. I just hug him, and he's, work from home life. He's just always there supporting as well. He literally feels like a human. So he's my child. And I do that every single morning, as I just try to spend time with my husband and my dog for about 20 minutes, just processing, getting ready for the day. And then I immediately jump on email. So this might mean I skip breakfast, which is not the best. However, I always have tons of bars. So I eat probably 3 BTR bars a day. And it's, once again, I feel really comfortable doing that because I know how good they are for me. And the energy bar and the recharge bar have actually replaced my coffee. So I've pretty much cut caffeine completely out of my life. I love what coffee can do and the jolt and the energy boost it gives you, but it also does not make me feel great. So I happen to be one of those people that gets very jittery on coffee and any type of caffeine, and I can feel myself shaking, and sometimes it makes me move faster, which is great, but my body is telling me no, this is not working for me. So I'm happy the bars have really helped me cut out caffeine pretty much exclusively. So, but that's pretty much my morning routine. Play with my dog, brush my teeth, and then immediately go right on email.
And then do you have kind of a set routine in the evening, or is it just you grind as long as you can and then straight to bed?
I love the evenings. And I used to be a morning person because as a personal trainer, I would train clients at 5 a.m. and I would do my own workout at 4 a.m. It was so structured. And then once you start a company, that structure goes out the window because you just have to be so nimble and adapt so quickly. The evenings are my favorite time because usually around 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, there's not a lot of incoming emails, requests, or inquiries. It is my creative time. So I block that time off, in my office or just even in front of the TV watching Food Network. It's just a great way to relax. And that's when I work on creative social media content, our website. And really it's so much fun because I love to dabble in a little bit of like amateur graphic design myself. And, I've done everything so far for the website, and it's just fun for me to be able to do that at night. And that's, when I make my connections and go on Instagram and catch up with people. So that's pretty much my evening routine. And then try to do that for as long as possible. And then I always listen to at least one podcast before I go to sleep. And sometimes I fall asleep to a podcast because everyone's voices are so smooth and lovely. But I love listening to business podcasts. It's like one of my favorite things to do. And one of my colleagues actually mentioned you should listen to podcasts on 1.5x speed because then you get through them faster and you can listen to more, but you're still gaining the benefits and listening to every piece of it. So I love that, and I've been doing that ever since.
I love that. Yeah, that 1.5 speed is something I need to get on. I haven't. I've tried, like, on the Apple Watch, you accidentally bump it and then it goes to 2x and it's like, what's happening? It's too fast. But 1.5 I think might be perfect.
Yeah, so and it's I'm like I said, it's such an honor to be here because I have listened to so many episodes and of your podcast, and the episode where you brought on, I believe it was Eliza from the Sill. Oh goodness, that was one of my favorite episodes. I just learned so much. Another graduate from NYU, so it's so exciting to see entrepreneurs just take a concept and turn it into something so special. And, I hope that's the goal for us as well too, even though we're in our infancy.
Yeah, thank you so much for the support. That's amazing.
Of course.
What else outside of food is interesting to you? And it could just be something you're like, in the next 2 to 3 years, you're really stoked to like try it, or you think is going to be a hot space that's undervalued today.
Yeah, I think I alluded to it a little bit as well, and I can expand more on this personalized nutrition in the food and beverage space. I really see, I see tons of brands, trying to do this and starting off with, like us using these functional superfoods and adaptogens. And I just see that, being taken completely to the next level. And, some brands that are just really trying to infuse these better for you ingredients that like I'm a big fan of myself, like, Magic Spoon cereal, they're taking this category that is so stale and I wish I thought of myself. Like I love cereal and, being able to infuse these better for you ingredients into and really blow it up and, have these fun creatives and packaging and whatnot. I think that more and more we're going to be looking at this personalized nutrition and what does it mean for each individual person, which I think is actually going to be harder for the brand. And it's going to mean making more strategic hires in the space of bringing experts into your corner and having this advisory board and making sure that you're having all the right people answer questions as opposed to, like a sophomore in college being, doing your customer service. Like my goal, customer service is so critical to BTR bar because we have, there's an education barrier and people want to know what is maca. So right now I'm doing customer service, but being able to bring someone on that understands that personalized nutrition, I think is going to be so vital.
Totally. There was one thing I skipped over on the wellness side that I'm curious to get your take on. So around like corporate wellness. So I think, we had Georgios from Nutrafol on a few episodes back, and he mentioned they implemented wellness breaks across the entire company. So there's like a couple 30-minute blocks where no one can schedule meetings with anyone else. And it's literally dedicated for wellness. What are some things that you've been thinking about, as you scale the company from 1 to 10 to 20 people that you're going to implement from a wellness perspective?
Absolutely. So I think and I love Nutrafol. It's such a great company. They're also doing the same thing, in the hair care space, like bringing these experts and estheticians and dermatologists and experts into the space to help customers just feel more comfortable using their products. I love it. So for something that I want to implement in the wellness space is I think that for my future hires and myself, one thing I try to do is walk every day. And I think that that's something, as as the team grows from me to, 2, 3, 5, 10, I want to be able to, whether it's a walking meeting or just, a walking one-on-one that has nothing to do with work. It just gets us some vitamin D, some sunshine, gets us out into the world as opposed to being, up against a screen. So I'm wearing my blue light blocking glasses. I wear them everywhere because I'm constantly looking at a screen and they just help me focus so much better. And I think I just do not get enough sunshine and I do not get out enough. And I think that's something I really want to institute into the company is, maybe our lunch break, everyone goes on lunch and everyone walks, tries to get some sunshine. And, the company's based in San Francisco. So being in a city, we are able to just walk from place to place and, get around pretty easily. So I think that's something I want to carry through and make sure that our company is staying well mentally, physically, emotionally, etc.
From your perspective, some of the other podcasts you listen to, what are your favorite things that they do that just keep you engaged? And I'll leave it there because I'm curious to hear your feedback about things that you love.
So I think for me and what I love that you do is these entertaining, thoughtful questions. I think that it's things that are tangible, and I'm always trying to provide tangibles whenever I do interviews or webinars or anything where I'm talking to someone. I want them to take away at least one thing that I said, as opposed to, when you're a founder, there's so much that's in my head and I could just spit it all out, but making sure that there's one tangible quote or piece of information that I can take away is something that I'm looking for in a podcast. And I think that you always set your guests up to be able to do that. And I love that. So I mean, I have probably like 100 podcasts constantly on repeat. And some of them are, more in the wellness space, like the Mind Body Green podcast, but the majority of them are D2C, entrepreneur. I love hearing entrepreneurs' stories and how they started. And, it's a grind. So being able to have a community and know that, someone 10 years before you or was in your spot right now is just really inspiring, and to see the company that they built. So I just love the questions that you throw at people and make sure that they're really getting, the listeners are really getting something from it.
Awesome. Okay, noted. Yeah, that tactical, like the tactical, do this step if you want to do this. I'm all about that. So that's good. Good to know that's working.
Yeah, I hope I provided at least one tidbit of information for people to take away here. So
No, you definitely did. You
thank
definitely
you.
did. All right. So final question, and you know this one because you're a listener. So it's a startup manifesto.
Yes.
So if you had to write a startup manifesto with 5 of the most important key lessons or pitfalls to avoid when starting out, what would they be?
Awesome. I actually wrote this down because I didn't want to miss one. So I'm going to share right now. Okay, so the first one that I wrote down, I talked a little bit about this. I operate 50% gut, 50% data. I think it's so important to be data driven, to look at the patterns of data. At the core, the numbers are going to tell you about your business, and they're going to tell you if you have good product market fit, if you have good brand market fit. Sometimes you have a great product, but your brand is just, it's lifeless. But there's also so many decisions that we have to make as founders and founding teams that you're just going to have to go with your gut, and you're going to have to be okay with it. And it's something I struggle with all the time. And that's why, I looked at my parents and, what would they do? And that really helps me. And just being able to sometimes talk to someone outside of the industry. So I usually talk to my husband. He's like, you know what to do already. You're asking me, but you already know in your gut what to do. So that's number one. Number two, this is my favorite. Don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. So I am a chronic perfectionist. I'm a Virgo. So everything I do is very organized, diligent, focused. And I think that sometimes perfection can stop you from just going for something. And in this space where that's constantly moving and you need to be nimble, you just need to go for it sometimes, and don't get caught up on like the font color. For example, we send a ton of emails out, and email marketing is one of my favorite things, designing the emails, the layout. Just sometimes you just got to get it out because you're getting information. You can always change the font color in a future month. Like, it's okay. 3, be customer obsessed. So it's not what you want. And this sometimes a little bit hard for me to think. I'm like, okay, I think people are really going to love this bar. And then I'll go and ask people for feedback. And they're like, I don't even know what that ingredient is. So being, balancing what you think is good for the company and what your customers are telling you what they want. Go to them, talk to them, message them on Instagram, on Facebook, set up focus groups, really figure out what they want, because that's what's going to drive your company. Always be learning. So, subscribe to everything. I probably subscribe to 100 newsletters, and there's, some of them you just, you scroll through, but you can really take a lot of, information and resources and get connected to so many different groups if you're subscribing to things, keeping your mind open, thinking, I know everything. That is not going to get you anywhere. So making sure that you're constantly learning. And then finding a founder network is the 5th piece of information I would share with people is, find a network of founders, and they don't have to be your best friends. They can be in this space. They don't have to be. Just find someone that you can talk to who understands this journey, because you might talk to your friends or colleagues in a different industry, and they're just going to look at you like you're crazy. So being able to find someone who's going along this journey with you is really, really vital. You can bounce ideas off of each other and just be a great support system.
It's awesome. Hey, there's 5 tactical steps right there.
Yes.
That's perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And before I let you go, I just want to acknowledge you. I think, what you've gone through, the resilience is unbelievable, and it's in the brand DNA. And I think for me doing this, my favorite thing is when I talk to founders that really embody the brand. Like your ethos, your personal ethos is the brand ethos. And that connection is so critical when you're in the early days. And so, that's so inspiring to see. And I think if people listen to this for an hour and take nothing else away, I think that is going to be something that will fuel them and keep them going. So just want to say thanks again. I'm going to be a huge supporter of BTR Bar moving forward. And thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much to me. I really appreciate it. And it was just such an honor to be here.
Of course. Ashley Nickelsen, founder of BTR Bar. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.